All right, all right, all right. You're listening to the We're Talking Football podcast. I'm Weston. With me, as always, my right hand man, Lou. Always coming with something a little bit different for us, Lou. I appreciate you for it. It is that time of the year for us here at the WTF podcast where we begin diving into the free agency portion of the offseason. Free agency actually officially begins on March 15th when the league year resets. Over the next few episodes, we're going to be diving into what we think these teams should prioritize for the 2023 free agency specifically, period, right? We will get into draft coverage. We will do all of that. We'll prioritize needs, identify some picks, but we're going to go through all 8 conferences, each team, spend a few minutes, Lou, as you put it, acting as if we are the general managers and what we would do related to free agency. And that's a couple of things, right? That could be players we're targeting, positions we're targeting, cap casualties, who do we need to re-sign? That sort of stuff is how we'll dive into it. Anything you wanna add to that?
As I started doing this and like making notes and stuff like that, I kind of think I like the off season. Being that I follow a loser franchise, I think I like the off season better than the regular season because it's like Christmas all over again. You never, it's a fresh start, rebirth, and you never know what's going to happen.
I agree with you in some capacity. Like it is from a content perspective, right? Like, hey, I got 32 teams that I can look at versus just being caught in the social media hell that is our individual worlds and teams that we root for, and same storyline over and over and over again. And for you and I, it just gives us a chance to dabble, on some outcomes and priorities for teams that we don't normally spend a lot of time on. And we're going to treat them the same that we would treat our own teams, as we'll see when we get to the NFC and AFC West. So, Lou, first up, we mentioned NFC East. I'm going to give you the honors of whichever team in the East you want to start with. And we're going to be on the clock. So we're, our staff continuously calls out. I feel like we have the staff of a restaurant service team here. So Lou and I are going to dabble with a little experiment and putting a 5-minute clock on your screens to keep track of us, with a little bit of surprise when that timer goes off.
This is kind of like a PTI or like around the horn thing,
Yep.
Get your points in, before the time, before the time goes off.
I want to position a challenge to anybody who's listening to this. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about each team. Obviously, there's going to be some high-level 30,000-foot view type themes. If you listen to these shorter clips and you want more transparency on, like, Lou, why would you prioritize that person over this person? Or why do you think that's a problem? Ask the question. Ask us on Twitter. Ask us on Instagram. Ask us on Facebook where we're posting these.
Comment on the YouTube
Comment on the YouTube video, and we will literally go out of our way. Like, if you want, we'll spend 10, 15 minutes elaborating on a single topic just to go ahead and post that content out.
That's a great point. Yesterday I had someone text me how asinine my thoughts about Derek Carr is, and he's easily a top 10 quarterback. And for about 25 minutes, I proved that individual why he was wrong.
Oh.
But that being said, yes, but hit us up. Let comment on Instagram, Twitter, you name it, man. Just hit us up, and we'll be more than happy to go into further detail. We're trying to make this a little shorter, short and sweet, kind of like myself. But yeah, just definitely hit us up.
I don't want to have these debates via text message or on the phone. I want to do them live on here, record, share, tear us apart in the comments when you disagree with our stance on something. Like, all is on the table in the off season. Everything is fair game. And always keep in mind, we're doing this from our perspective, and we see football different than a lot of people, right? We see football different from one another on how we view and evaluate things. So should make for interesting conversation. Lou, that being said, who you starting with? And I'll pivot off of you.
Let's stay local. Let's stay in the lovely state of New Jersey, the Sunshine State.
The live free or die hard state.
Yeah. That being said, let's start with the New York Giants.
All right, cool.
Who reside in New Jersey.
Let me get to my notes here. Make sure I'm in the NFC. All right. All right, Lou. You are on the clock, sir. Your 5 minutes begins now.
My God, so much more intimidating when it's like right in your face. Jesus.
You just wasted 5 seconds.
Oh God. Okay. All right. So I am the GM of the New York Giants, and I'm looking at my team from a cap standpoint. And I have $46 million in salary cap. Sounds all lovely. I'm towards the top of the league when it comes to salary cap, but I got a couple of major stars I have to get under contract. News came out today that we signed Daniel Jones and we tagged Saquon Barkley. That was not of my doing, by the way. That was more of the owner breathing down my neck and making sure we got Daniel Jones under contract for long term because he's a firm believer in him, is not ready to give up on him, and he also did not want to lose Saquon Barkley. While I'm all for keeping the band back together for continuity purposes, right? In my opinion, I think I needed to see another year of Daniel Jones. I would have tagged Daniel Jones at a lower number. I know you can't finagle the cap hit as you can with a long-term contract extension, but I just need to see another year of Daniel Jones. But I wouldn't have let him walk in free agency because of where we draft this year. They're not going to be easily accessible to get one of the young quarterbacks in this year's draft. And I would have re-signed Saquon Barkley. But yes, we need to add talent to this team. We're not in the business of losing talent. So regardless, we got both under contract for this year, and I'm excited for that. Next is to get Daniel Jones some real talent, so we can actually accurately evaluate his play. I need to look into getting some true alpha playmakers. I'm talking about if I have to make a trade for a second round pick for DeAndre Hopkins, or bring in Odell Beckham or Jacoby Myers or Dalton Schultz, whoever. I need to acquire more talent for Daniel Jones during free agency to see if he is the real deal, because the way the contract is structured, it's really a 2-year deal with an out on the 3rd-year deal. So I have these next 2 years to make sure, if Daniel Jones is the guy. And what I don't acquire from a free agency or trade standpoint, from a veteran standpoint, right? I'm going to acquire the opposite in the draft. So if I get a receiver from a free agency, or if I get a receiver, or if I get if I get a receiver in free agency, or I trade for a wide receiver, I'm drafting a tight end round 1, and then vice versa. If I'm getting a tight end like a Dalton Schultz in free agency, I'm drafting a wide receiver in round 1 to add more playmakers to the squad. Next, I got to show up the middle of this defense. It's been atrocious. Our linebacker play, we have a great front in the trenches, front 4 there, but we need to sign an inside linebacker. And there's plenty of options when it comes to free agency. We have Drew Tranquil from the Chargers. We can sign. Eric Kendricks just came on the market. Zach Cunningham from, I believe, is the Titans. And then Tremaine Edmonds from the Bills. One of these guys we would be able to afford to bring in to really bolster the middle of this defense. And last but not least, it's imperative, absolutely imperative, to re-sign Dexter Lawrence. Last year was his coming out year, right? He really was a disruptive force in the middle of our defense. I think you're going to see more maturity, more growth from him, and his play is starting to evolve. He's a fantastic player. Love his attitude. He makes everyone around him better. I'm a firm believer that interior pressure can be more catastrophic than pressure on the edges, and that's exactly what he does. He can stuff the run. He can get in the quarterback's face up the middle. But those are my game plans for this offseason, and what I need to accomplish with that $46 million in cap.
All right, you got it done in under the 5 minutes, so I'll stop.
We talk quick out here in Jersey.
We fly through, no BS. I agree with so much of it. I know, like, from the outside perspective, like, you see Daniel Jones's contract or his reported contract and what it's worth, and like 10 million plus is a lot to spend on a running back, but I think your statement is spot on accurate. Of we are not in the business of subtracting talent. We need to add talent to this team. And those two individuals are a huge portion and, contributors to your success last year, and you want to build off that. We can get into whether Daniel Jones is worth $40 million a year or not, but
he's not.
He's not. Yeah. But this happens when teams have money to spend. They'll be a little bit more liberal with that money.
And they're a little desperate too. It's a perfect
100%.
Combination of having, that cap space and desperation.
What's the option, right? Like, what are the other options, right?
Like,
there's no better option, to be honest with you.
You could have tagged him.
Could have tagged him, but then you're just, play devil's advocate. Then the contract goes to Saquon, and I'd rather, honestly, as a business, I'd rather sink my money into the quarterback position than I would into the running back position. And I feel like with quarterbacks, let's just say Daniel Jones ascends again, right? Then it looks like 3 quarterback signatures later next year, he's not even in the top 5, top 10 paid, right? And he continues to grow. And the one thing about quarterback contracts is you're always in a position to renegotiate. To me, the skill positions, the running back, the wide receivers, their contracts get a little bit more complicated, where you, because it's a shorter window, right? And they're not earning that massive amount of money where, like, with a quarterback, you could just be like, hey, we're just going to convert everything to a signing bonus this year, and $30 million comes off the books, right? Like, and you'll do that for your quarterback. You're not going to do that for a running back that's inching closer to the 30 mark. Not that Saquon is, right? But he will be in short order.
Yeah, listeners need to listen to what Weston just said right now. I think that's going to be a theme you're going to be hearing from a lot of our coverage of these teams coming up. So, yes, teams are more willing to restructure a quarterback because of the longevity they do have usually. And if they find their guy, it makes it that much more easier. You're willing to invest and kick the cash down the road with a quarterback because of, like I said, their career length, and especially if you got one. So you don't mind doing that. Other positions, sometimes the fall off is quite quick and it's hard to time those. So I think that's a very good point, Weston.
Well, thank you. I don't make many of them. All right. So I guess that leaves me up. I'm going to go with who I still want to call the Washington football team, because I actually am obsessed with that name, but I'm going to go.
I want to call them the other name, but
I know.
Not trying to get canceled here.
No, I honestly, I just kind of dug the Washington football team. It just reminded me of when you don't recreate your team name and you join a Yahoo fantasy league and it's like Lou's glorious team, right? I just kind of like that. It jives with me. So I'm going to go with the Washington Commanders. Let me go ahead and start this bad boy. So $15.5 million in cap space. They were 8-1 last year. And for a good portion of the season, there was a lot of chatter and talk about how could there really be 4 NFC East teams in the playoffs? Because they were in the hunt. They were absolutely in the hunt. And honestly, I just feel like the East feels like a slippery slope, right? Are you going to get the same unexpected production that you got from a not super talented team like the New York Giants, right? They performed way above expectation. Dallas Cowboys, we're going to talk about all these teams. We're going to talk about the Eagles in a moment here too, but do the Eagles go 14-3 again? I'm going to talk about that, right? You never know what you're getting with the Cowboys. This division is still winnable by any one of these teams. Here's where I sit. As the general manager of the Washington Commanders, you have to address the quarterback situation. Wentz, gone. Heineke, free agent. That leaves you with Sam Howell and Jake Fromm as your roster quarterbacks. When I look at this roster, pretty talented on defense, some young special players on offense at the skill position. I just don't think you can let that sit, right? You just the season's going to get away from you too fast. So candidly, why are we not hearing their name more about let's kick tires on Lamar. Let's kick tires on Aaron Rodgers. We're not an undesirable place. We might have an undesirable owner. That's for another day and time as well. But we're a good football team, right? And a lot of people like Ron Rivera. Now you got Eric Bieniemy in-house calling plays, right? That's an attractive piece in my opinion. I just feel like if we're not here, if you're not hearing me talk about Lamar or Aaron Rodgers as a prioritization for this team, I'm not doing my job. That's just the way that I look at it. So I think that's where it's at, right? When you look around, McLaurin, Dotson, Robinson, as a rookie, played great, coming off a gunshot wound. Gibson looked even better in like a secondary role, right? Like he just kind of had that new wrinkle for him where he wasn't an every down guy. A guy went from wide receiver to running back, like in the NFL. So I just got to feel pretty good and confident in my skill positions. Another priority for me is around 2 players. One of them's a restructure. So I have to restructure Jonathan Allen sitting there with a $21 million cap, especially since I just franchised Deron Payne. So if he plays off of that and he's sitting at 18, 19 million guaranteed, I can't have 40 million tied up between my 2 defensive tackles when the edge rushers are going to need to get paid as well shortly. And then for me, I need a post-1 June cut for Curtis Samuel. 10.6 million in savings. The production just does not match the contract, in my opinion. And as it sits right now, if nothing's done, he would carry the 3rd highest cap number on this team. That's just not justifiable. Defensively, where we can get better, especially with like Bobby McCain departure. I'm not looking to bring Bobby McCain back, but I'm looking for safety talent, and we have cap, right? So if like Lamar and Aaron aren't in play and we don't have to get crazy, I'm looking at Jesse Bates. I'm looking at Jimmy Ward. I'm looking at Jordan Poyer. I'm looking at some top tier safety talent that can come in right next to Cameron Curl and kind of bolster that defensive backfield. Aside from the quarterback, here's the number 1 priority for this offense and for this team. I am pushing everything I have at Dalton Schultz, and that name specifically at tight end. Great production last year. I think he's still ascending as a player. And the most important part is, boy, would I love to steal him away from a divisional opponent. Take away talent and add talent. That's the name of the game. So outside of the quarterback position being the number 1 priority, and I don't know if they have the answers. I don't think Lamar or Aaron comes to me, so it might be like, hey, Taylor Heineke, please come back. Right. That's just the way it might look. And then you give Sam Howell some time, but Dalton Schultz, by name, not just position, specific player, is a huge priority for me if I'm sitting in the GM seat for the Washington Commanders. And that's all she wrote.
As much as it's hard probably to try to get these done in 5 minutes with these 5-minute timers, right?
We're doing it.
It's also hard not to chime in.
Yeah.
Because here you are, you're talking, you're like, you have cap, like, you're like, oh, the Washington football team has cap space. And then you're like, get rid of Curtis Samuel. I'm like, then if you get rid of Curtis Samuel, I get that why you want to get rid of him. But like, they have no other talent. Like, you're stripping away their talent, right?
I don't consider him to be the talent possession that he was, the way he was coveted when they brought him in.
He did flash last year a couple,
towards the end.
Yeah. But then you backed it up. So I'm a very impatient person. Then you backed it up and saved you. You totally redeemed yourself when you said bringing in Dalton Schultz. And let me tell you why that's a fantastic move. Because it'd probably be similar in pay, if not, to Curtis Samuel. But what's the best thing for a young quarterback? That safety blanket, that tight end, and stealing from a division rival is huge. He's a complete player. I do love. I had to wait for the whole plan, and I'm like, hey, you can't get rid of Samuel, man. I'm like, just because you just need something else right now. You can't be taking things away from, Howell. Let me also talk to you about Howell too. If Howell came out a year prior than when he did, he'd be a first-round pick. He lost a lot of talent on that North Carolina team, and Ron Rivera feels this way. He said this during the combine as well. He made a good point. He stayed, and he went back to school for another year, lost a lot of talent, and still play admirably. I like to see him when he fully looks like. He does definitely gives him that Baker Mayfield vibe because he's similar in stature, has a strong arm, and is mobile. Not like he's mobile in the pocket, and he can run too. But so I'm interested to what he can bring to this offense, especially with a legit offensive coordinator in Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, I'll say this, and we can foreshadow what the quarterback class looks like next year. Free agents and the draft as well. But I just can't help but feel the division is still there for the taking. Like, don't be wrong, right? Like, don't roll on Sam. this team's going as far as the quarterback can carry them. That's it. Like, there's no two ways around it. So they have to have some competency under center. And as much as I might like Sam Howell, you can't treat this team like you just picked number one overall with low expectations. Yeah. I have higher expectations for the team.
Yeah.
Dude, I picked them to win the division last year. Like, they have talent on both sides of the football, you know, and they're well coached. They're well coached, and they're going to get better coached with Bieniemy. Yeah. All right. So knowing that I have the Eagles, that leaves you with the Cowboys, sir.
Yes, it does.
I am Lou. You are on the clock.
I'm not going to attempt to do like a Southern accent because it would just be cringeworthy. So I am the general manager. I'm one of the Jones boys for the Dallas Cowboys, and I come in this offseason realizing I'm $16 million over the cap. So the first thing I got to do when I set my left foot into that door is I need to get some cap relief. So I have three things in order to do so. First, either I have to extend or restructure Dak's contract to less than that $49 million cap number. A restructure of Dak, because I still believe in him, right? That's going to free up $21 million. So right over the bat, right on that restructure alone, I'm $5 million over the cap, right? But I still need to, sign free agents. I need to re-sign my impending free agents. I might want to go acquire other free agents or players via trade. So I also have to make some additional moves. I think we have to start changing the guard. The players that a lot of Dallas Cowboy fans have been enamored with over the years and have been staple to this team. It's time for them to go to greater pastures. I'm talking about you got to cut Tyrone Smith post June 1st. That's going to save $13.6 million. It's only going to give me a $4 million dead caps hit right there. Now, and sorry, I also got to cut Zeke post June 1st. That saves another $10.9 million. I'm not even interested in him coming back for a lesser number because last year he was just relegated to, within the 5 to 10 yard, line duties, like the red zone duties there. He just was a touchdown. And you can find those anywhere, those type of running backs. And this is Pollard's team right now. Now, here comes the issue. Well, before I get ahead of myself, if I do those three moves, like restructure Dak, cut Tyron Smith, and cut Zeke, my moves, it gives me $30 million in cap space. Just like that. And that's a minimal amount of moves to get rid of the dead weight that's on the team, the aging dead weight. But like I said, Pollard, this is Pollard's team. So he's coming off an injury, right? So I'm not an idiot. I need to get a running back. And there's only one way to get a running back nowadays. It's in the draft. And I need to get a physical running back. I'm not going to look anywhere else other than within state at the University of Texas. No, I'm not going to waste a first-round pick on the famous Bijan Robinson because that is disastrous. You don't draft running backs in the first round, right? It didn't work for me last time. It's not going to work for me this time. I'm talking about his backup, Rashawn Johnson out of Texas. He's that big. He can give you that big backfield that Zeke, will leave behind after I send him his walking papers. So I'm drafting him, in day 2, maybe day 3, my draft picks. And then the one guy I really do want to bring back, I want to re-sign Donovan Wilson. He was an extremely valuable piece in that back end of the secondary. He was an enforcer that was good at stopping the run. He got pressures against the quarterback with 5 sacks. He just was a tone setter. Watching him play, the Niners, in that playoff game, he was hitting hard, man. And I was really impressed, by his play. Got to bring him back. And being that I did free up some money, I need to get the Cowboy fans back on my side and back on the side of this team, right? They are frustrated with our failures in the playoffs. I usually don't do this. This is something I've done in the past, right? But I need to make a splash play for either DeAndre Hopkins to have people stop bringing Amari Cooper's name up every time when we're talking about Dak not having another playmaker, or hell, make his strength stronger. trade for Jalen Ramsey, right? I just need something to give energy to this team and the fan base have confidence that, hey, we are really going for it this year because we are as frustrated as them. So those are the moves I'm making. I'm trying to hit a home run. I'm no longer singles or doubles. I'm trying to hit a home run here in Dallas.
Yeah. I think that's the most important point is your last point. Is if I'm the general managers, I need the fans to fall back in love with this team. They're tired of the narrative of just we have faith in who we got. Let's go.
By the way, we had to pick an alarm like a sound that's obnoxious as ourselves, and we both agreed to that sound.
We went through 14 different sounds to find that one, just for full transparency. But I think, Lou, that's your home run point, and that's your splash point of the evening. Is got to get you back, got to feel like we're pushing forward, right? Like, and sometimes it's I need a big name. I need a name that the whole league knows, that my fans know and clamor for. Like, Jerry, show me that you're doing something for this team.
They used to be like that back in the day with the Roy Williams or the Ishmael, they used to be like that. It didn't work out, but you got to show that you need to take advantage of this weak NFC.
Weak NFC, tough division. What's going to put you over the top? Otherwise, it's just status quo. Like, good enough to make the playoffs, maybe good enough to win the division, and then ultimately that's where it is. I just don't see the true difference maker on the offensive side of the ball. Like, CeeDee Lamb is a hell of a player. Tony Pollard is super explosive, but like, who sets them over the top? Like, on the defensive end, like, we know you got Trayvon, we know you got Micah Parsons. Like, these are very talented individuals and tend to make game-changing plays. Match that veracity on offense as well.
Yeah. That's what I said. They've been, pseudo linked to DeAndre Hopkins. Jalen Ramsey might be a little too expensive with what the Rams are trying to obtain for him. But Hopkins, a second rounder, which is really a late second rounder, which is really third round talent, might be just enough to make Jerry think twice making that trade.
Totally agree. I think he'd be a natural fit too. But we're gonna say DeAndre Hopkins' name linked to a lot. Especially because it's not truly free agent. It's trading for that individual, but it's not gonna. Arizona's in the middle of like imploding everything, so you could probably have them for less than you might even expect. Awesome. So I am up with the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me get to my stuff here. Let me start the timer on myself. So we all know about the Philadelphia Eagles. They finished 14-3 coming off of a Super Bowl appearance. They have $3.8 million in cap space. We're in a little bit of trouble, from the GM's perspective. We have a lot of big name talent that sits in free agency right now with not a lot of cap and not a lot of maneuverability in terms of like contracts that we can totally go out there and restructure. Like, I'm going to call this out. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm identifying the handful of players of my own that I need to bring back, because you can't bring them back all, but you do want to. I do want to return a core of this team to keep me highly competitive and ensure that I'm in the same slate. Like, so for instance, just on the defensive side alone, you have 7 defensive starters who played at least 60% of the snaps last year as free agents. Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, Kazir White, Epps, TJ Edwards, CGJ, James Bradbury, right? Like, that's just on the defensive side of the ball. There's some things that we need to look in on the offensive side as well. So for me, defensively, I'm prioritizing at least one player from each level of the defense that I need to bring back. Starting from the defensive line, I'm prioritizing Fletcher Cox. Hargrave might be a little bit younger, but I just like the mentor and the leadership that Fletcher Cox brings, and he can still play this game. I want to bring back TJ Edwards, balled out last year. I'd love to see if he can repeat that as well. Contract's probably going to be high just based off of performance last year and how far our team went. And believe it or not, I'm bringing back Epps. I think I can bring back Epps cheaper than I can bring back CGJ. And he was just ultra consistent. Actually, he played like 96% of the defensive snaps last year. So kind of a little bit of a unsung hero outside of like James Bradbury and big play Slay. But I do think corners are hit or miss, right? Like they have an all world year one year, and then the next year they're toast all year long. It's just the nature of being out on that island. It's tough. So I think I'm looking and I'm prioritizing the safety position. The other piece here is important when I get to the offensive line is the free agency / retirement of one Jason Kelsey, who was widely advertised going into the Super Bowl, playing against his brother Travis, especially on this offense. The center is the quarterback of the offensive line. While they're going to look, I'm going to look for depth in the draft because there's not, in my opinion, there's not a ton of studly centers out there in free agency. I'm looking at McGovern, as somebody that I think is going to be a very popular name that is seasoned, has experience, can mentor the depth. I do believe that my future center is going to be found in the latter rounds of this draft, kind of a unexpected guy that just comes onto the scene like most of these superstars actually do from time to time again. But I need to get that right. And I need some sort of continuity and some sort of chemistry between my center and my quarterback, and I need that to go well. Our offense goes as the running game goes, and that includes the QB. So I got to prioritize bringing back Miles Sanders. Still only 26, played all 17 games last year, ran for 1,300 yards, 11 touchdowns. And the way that we run, he doesn't take a beating, right? Like he's not 30 carries a game, but between him, Scott, I know what's remaining on the roster, but do I really have faith in Trey Sermon, to come in and duplicate the production that I've seen from Miles Sanders? No. And I think I've seen enough to know that, Miles is a good player and we want him here in Philly. And then ultimately my true strategy here is I got to hang back and wait for both bolstering my defensive line and my offensive line. I got to see what second and third wave vets might remain that are more interested in playing for a championship in the twilight years of their career that I can sign that are still competent and can still play this game. Like some names that come to mind for me on like the defensive side of the ball, like maybe a Patrick Peterson to go into that secondary opposite Slay. Maybe I'm taking a flyer on an Emmanuel Mosley coming off a torn ACL on another, prove it type deal. Going back to the defensive line, like does Jadeveon Clowney want to come play and help put some pressure on the quarterback and compete for a Super Bowl? I don't know, but that's going to be the ultimate focus is like, we are not in a position. Damn it. I am not in a position essentially to go sign big name free agents. It's going to be about retaining as much of our talent as I possibly can, producing in the draft, and then ultimately, hey, what vets want to come and get another crack at this thing?
That is the most obnoxious fucking. I'm not sure if you ever had like that rubber chicken back in the day, right? When you squeeze it, it's on levels with that. A couple of things. Jason Kelsey, if he doesn't come back, that's a tremendous blow. But they do have a contingency plan behind him. They've been grooming Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska. He's a young offensive lineman, and I think that's someone that he's another year in the system and has been groomed by Kelsey. Kelsey's been his mentor. I think that will help soften the blow, right? As for Miles Sanders, I totally disagree with you on that. Miles Sanders, I always felt like when I watched him play with the Eagles, I always wanted more from him. I never felt like, well, this is the guy type of thing. And I think some of their needs, they're in a lot of trouble because they do have a lot of starters that are going to price themselves out of Philly. but they also have 2 first-round draft picks this year.
True.
Why not address within the top 10 a cornerback, right? Cornerback position, right? You're probably thinking maybe Christian Gonzalez at Oregon or Witherspoon, I think was that Illinois. And then the back end, why not Gibbs from Alabama, the running back? He's explosive. He's fast. He's reminds me a little bit of Jamal Charles-esque, right? I know we're not supposed to be talking about draft and what have you, but like, these are the things that if I'm the GM of the Eagles, I would have in the back of my head that, hey, I got 2 first-round picks to get 2 starters. Now, I know I stated before with the Cowboys, you don't draft a running back in the first round, but they need to draft. The Eagles need to replenish starters. All right. So 1 starter would be a running back for them, and they're in a different position than the Cowboys. So 1 would be the running back, and the other would be the cornerback. I think that would be a good way. Or there are going to be some good cornerbacks towards the back end of that first round as well, so they can do that. Love the fact that Jadeveon Clowney, that guy is just, he's destined to, sign 1-year deals that are cheap. I think he's going to be like your Ndamukong Suh type of career. He's going to go to, contenders, trying to get a couple of million each year just to see if he can chase that ring. So I do love the fact that you add in talent there. And yeah, Fletcher Cox is probably more realistic than Hargraves because Fletcher Cox is older and probably cheaper than Hargraves. So that's what that does definitely make sense as well. But yeah, the Eagles, they went. You got to admire that they went all in for it, and they came just a little short. Because if they're coming off a Super Bowl win, it buys you some more time as a GM to like, okay, maybe we don't have to reload as quick. Maybe we can take a step back, build, retool for in the next year or two for another run. But the fact that you didn't hit your ultimate goal, maybe that makes you a little more antsy. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing I need to do as a GM is avoid the Super Bowl hangover. I know we haven't seen it because, we kind of in some capacity. I mean, Cincinnati obviously made a valiant effort there and saw themselves in the championship game after losing the Super Bowl, but we also saw the Super Bowl champion fail to make the playoffs, right? So it was kind of the inverse there, but it's been a reality, and the reality is when you have a really good team that's touted as a really good roster, people are going to leave. People are going to go get their bag. People are going to go get their due. The window is very short in the NFL, and the only reason why you took my words, Lou, we're not talking about the draft. We're talking about free agency, so I'm plotting the moves. Around.
I'm always talking about the draft, Wes.
I know.
I googled 2024 NFL mock draft the other day.
Dude, but I can't even talk about the draft until we get into the 3rd round compensatory picks of the NFL draft. That's where my world sits.
There's one thing that you did fail to mention. What about get Hurts under long-term contracts?
Doesn't have to happen right now.
Okay. He's in his final year.
No.
Yeah, he's not a first-round pick.
Oh, that's right. He's a 2nd-round pick, so he's going into his 4th year. So I did overlook that then. I don't know why in the back of my mind I just assumed a top-tier quarterback had the 5th year, but you're right. He was the early 2nd-round pick. If I'm covering my ass right now, since I did neglect it, I think my cover statement is more about I also need to see more about how this quarterback market shapes out.
You don't want to be the last of the table on this one, though.
You don't, but apparently you don't want to be the first either. It's been brutal. All right, Lou, that wraps us up for the NFC East. We'll be back in short order with the AFC East. Let everybody know where they can find us.
Find us on Instagram and Twitter at WTF Pod NFL. Weston, hit them up with the YouTube.
On YouTube at We're Talking Football Podcast, WE''RE Talking Football Podcast. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, leave the comments, leave the suggestions. We take them into account. You might be responsible for crafting a future show. So we look forward to it. And again, we'll be back with the AFC East in short order.